Welcome to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where Peter Madison and David Sherrock discuss the complexities of adopting new ways of working at scale. Hello, and we are back again. And today I'm here with Dave and with Tommy. So, Tommy, would you like to go and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure thing. Thank you for having me. My name's Tommy Cotter. I'm a director of data products at Benzinga. And for those who are unfamiliar with Benzinga, we're a financial media company. So we write news about the stock markets, and we primarily cater to an investor, retail investor audience. We've been around for around 15 years now.
Can I what has changed in 15 years? 15 years is just about going to include 2008 and everything beyond that. So it feels to me like there's a really interesting journey that you've had over the last 15 years.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change in 15 years. I would say the biggest change, in my opinion, has just been the democratization of everything. Democratization is kind of a cliche term. I feel it's kind of a buzzword. Everybody says that they're democratizing something. But in 2008, it really wasn't as cliche. I feel like institutions and big businesses, they still held the keys. But over the last few years, people have just been able to access information in a better and easier form. So there's been less of a data moats are not what they once were. And so I would say that's my biggest takeaway. And then as far as the markets, there's a ton of interesting things that are happening with prediction markets and private markets, and retail investors just have a lot more access to trade or bet.
How do things like data quality come in when you've got this massive information coming from all these different sources? How do you look at things like provenance or validation of this and things like that when all of this data is coming?
Yeah, I think it can be especially challenging. And I think having a human in the loop nowadays is as important as ever. So many companies it's easy to spin up a product using AI and you're off to the races. But if it's just generating slop, I think that the value, people are going to be able to understand if it's just some vibe coded tool that's creating AI slop. So data quality is important. And one example of data quality that I'm seeing now is with our conference call transcripts endpoint. So we recently created a product that transcribes earnings conference calls, and it's obviously it utilizes AI under the hood to transcribe these speaker names, but the AI is just looking at the audio, and it doesn't have a great enrichment engine to properly transcribe these names. And so we utilize humans in the loop to recognize, is this the actual correct spelling of the name? If the name was Tommy, is it actually spelled Tommy, or did the AI correctly spell it? So I think humans in the loop still is the number one way to get it done right.
Yeah, I have that problem with my company all the time. It's Zodiac spelt with an X. Yeah, it's never going to get that right.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of a quip to come back on that one about spelling, but I'm not sure how you'd pronounce the X anyway. So do you see that changing? So what's interesting there is there's definitely, we see this all the time with all the transcription tools and so on, that there's that gap between names or any number of different things and what's actually being transcribed. But there are also databases, presumably, for example, conferences, who the speakers are, who's any sort of earnings call has a list of names and there'll be an agenda. So possibly there is sources of data that can be looked for outside of that. There's still the need for human in the loop in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. There definitely are databases where you could provide the model access to the enrichment data where it could properly enrich these speaker names. It's just more of a pipeline that needs to be built. So if you're trying to quickly get something off the ground, the AI tools the frontier models do a great job out of the box. And then if you want to build, a robust product using those enrichment tools, it's certainly possible.
I know it's probably not quite in your space, but adjacent. But I can see looking at the earnings calls, looking at the transcripts and what's said there, and then comparing it to the published documentation that comes along with that, and looking for where are there discrepancies, or are there things being said in one which are not being said in the other, which might be leading to different changes or almost arbitrage across, like the arbitrage of information and how that impacts stock prices and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. A lot of times what will happen is the official SEC document for an earnings release, for example, will come out at say 4 p.m. and investors they buy it off of what's in that official document, and then an hour or two later the official conference call happens where the executive is speaking about how the company performed, and a lot of times investors will find one nugget of information that's in that earnings call that contradicts what they just previously read in the SEC release, and I think that happens pretty frequently. It's fascinating to see those examples,
and that changes the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, totally.
Can you talk, Tommy, a little bit about the journey you've seen? Because I'm presuming at this point, maybe you can clarify that your organization uses AI a lot of this. You're data heavy, you're transcribing lots of information. We've used the example of the earnings calls, but what has changed over the last, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years as you're going through that? How rapidly have you adopted AI? How has it changed your business?
Yeah, people are able to do so much more with so less now, and across the business, software developers are able to use these AI tools to accelerate their production of code, and we're able to accelerate our production of content, and on the editorial side, that is. So it's impacted us across the business. I think the one critical piece that we're starting to see is that we still need to have people steering these tools and making the decisions on what to build and why to build it. So I think that's one critical piece that still holds a lot of value is people having the executive function and that self-agency to make these decisions about what to build and how to build it.
So you're purposefully ensuring that there's humans in the loop, and then ensuring that as information comes in, the processes. Are there any elements of this? Because one of the things that I'm starting to see, especially in some of the spaces where there's something that's low risk, that we're going to say, okay, I'm happy to I trust AI to do this right every time, or at least the impact of it doing it wrong is not going to be such that I'm going to be too worried, or that there's a subsequent deterministic step after that will catch it if it does. There's things like that. Are you seeing that in the way you're building out systems as well?
Yeah, definitely. And for anything that's low risk, like you said, we're okay with having AI fully manage that process, but anything that's client facing it's definitely important for us to have eyes on it from a human perspective.
What would you say has been your biggest learning out of the last, I think we're in like 4 years now, almost 3.5 years since sort of ChatGPT really hit the mainstream? What's your biggest learning in that?
My biggest learning, so much changes so quickly with AI, and every week there's a new advancement, and so my biggest learning is just to be nimble and adaptive, I'd say. We've spun up projects where we've started with one architecture that made a lot of sense at the time, at the genesis of the project, and then as time has gone on, certain technologies have changed, and there's a better solution, a better way to handle a problem. And so I would say that the thing that we've learned is that it's important to be nimble in today's day and age.
Can you kind of describe, I mean, both Peter and I come from the Agile DevOps space, so we have our own idea of what nimble looks like. What do you look for on your teams in terms of speed of change or adapting to things like the technology shift? So and the reason, I mean, if I think of nimble, there is nimble, which can be incredibly, like, digital agencies are very, very nimble. They tend to change from day to day, but a lot of organizations cannot handle that pace of adjustment. So what do you see?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good answer for this. I mean, we're very, very much so startup culture, so we're able to change more quickly than some of the banks that we work with. I think that's one advantage that we have on being agile.
When you look at your team, so you presumably have a team that's looking after the data in there. What sort of characteristics are you looking for these days? And has it changed?
Yeah, I think it has changed. I would say Backend is still extremely valuable. People who can understand how the whole system works, people who are on the DevOps side that understand everything down to where the code is hosted, how it's hosted, how these deployments happen. I think that's certainly valuable. Whereas some of these front end changes have become less important. Building front end user facing components aren't as important or aren't as valuable as they once were.
Why do you think that is?
I just think, I mean, it's certainly due to AI and how much easier it is to one shot an entire application, where previously people spent a lot of time on that stuff.
So can I mean, if you look over 2026, is there something specific that you and your teams are currently addressing that has significantly changed from last year? And it may not be AI related, but I'm just thinking, like, you've got every organization every technical organization is continually having to evaluate what's going on, and things are moving very, very fast. So what are the headaches that your team is particularly focused on compared to last year?
Yeah, one big thing is just security and compliance. So we're focusing on our SOC 2 and GDPR compliance. And I think that one critical reason for that, outside of just the advantages of safety and making sure that our infrastructure is in the spot that it needs to be, is from an optics standpoint, for external facing customers. If you've done the work to invest in your security posture, both from a time standpoint and a money standpoint, you're a legitimate business and company. And now these AI startups can be spun up so quickly where they may not invest in those things, and the optics are that they're not legitimate. And so I think that's one unique thing that we're focusing on this year that we wouldn't have really thought of previously.
And if I'm understanding that correctly, that's very definitely signaling to the market that your organization has taken care of the kind of critical.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's when people see a company, it's easy to perceive them as illegit if they don't have all of the if they haven't invested in those types of things.
Is there anything exciting in the AI space, especially since you're working within data, that's sort of making you think, oh, I can't wait for that to come out? or anything like that. But not like, hey, here comes Opus 4.9. Yay. But things which are, you think that this is really going to be a game changer for us if we had something.
Offhand, I don't know if I can think of anything offhand, particularly in the AI space. What about you guys? Do you have anything that you're looking forward to?
I think I'd like it if some of these tools actually did half of what the hype says they do. That would be lovely.
Well, consistently, right? So in a very controlled environment, it looks like you can get something, and then you bring it into a real world operational scenario, and everything is not quite as it seemed.
Or we still have this disconnect between I can build out an orchestration engine that understands and can put together incredible solutions in a fraction of the time that it would have taken just a few years ago, and that's wonderful and that's great. Except now you're going to hit the rest of the world and all of the systems they work in and all the way they work and how they define work and what that looks like. And it's an imperfect match, like figuring out like, well, okay, how do I need to evolve from where you are versus bringing something that was done elsewhere. You can learn, but that's always been the case, right? There is no one size fits all. It's how do we evolve the system into something that works for us, something that we can adapt, unless we're willing to throw out everything. But if you're going to throw out everything, that pretty much, unless you've got very, very adaptable people, then you're probably going to need a new group of people.
Yeah, I think MCPs are extremely interesting and becoming more and more important to be able to make these connections. And previously we had APIs, which are great. A lot of MCPs are just wrappers around APIs, but I think that MCPs that have these complex workflows and maybe are handling multiple API endpoints in the background. I think those types of things are pretty neat and are going to become more important in the near future.
That's an interesting one when we think of I agree with you in that an MCP that effectively allows me to use natural language to talk to a set of tools and figure out how to interact with those. But then most of them at the moment are all set up for like, here's your set of APIs, here's your set of APIs, here's your set of APIs. I mean, skills sort of solve some of that, right? Because I can have a skill that runs, even has deterministic scripts built into it that it calls. It can start to do that type of work. And you can build out your own sort of set of skills that will work for you here. Have you started to do that within your organization? Like looking at here's the organizational context, here's the how we work here that gets fed into all of the work that gets done and built by AI within our.
Yeah, internally we definitely have, and we're discussing what an internal MCP server will look like, where users can get internal users can get data from maybe an analytics tool, and then maybe that analytics tool checks against our CRM. Those types of workflows that are a little bit more complex and aren't necessarily just a single API call. That's something that we've definitely begun thinking about.
Do you have? I'm somewhat curious about this too. But as a team, have you started to look at what is the context we need to create here? So if there was like to work within the data space, this is how we define schemas. This is how we define principles that systems and dashboards and capabilities built within our environment must follow these sets of rules.
Yeah, we certainly have, and it kind of goes back to the basics, and it's just about productionizing it. We've always documented and defined those things in Confluence and our white papers, right? And if we can transpose that into code and into a tool, how can we use those tools internally to be more efficient? That's something that we've started talking about.
What is it? Life cycle. Yeah, sorry, Peter, go ahead.
I was just going to say those documents then have a life cycle, so you need some sort of system or way of working that is keeping them up to date as they change with time.
Yeah, yeah. Traceability too, because sometimes these agents can make changes, and all of those changes need to be able to be traced back to the agent, why they made that change, when they made that change.
Can you speak? I mean, one of the interesting things as organizations are making this shift is we learn from things going wrong, right? So what are some of the big learnings that you've seen where, and I don't mean wrong in front of customers, I mean like you trip over your shoelace and gets captured, but you find out significant sort of strategic shifts in how to work because of mistakes that get made, risks that get, either found out or ignored until they bubble up. So are there any kind of critical things that you've seen that you go, okay, I know in future we've always got to look at this because of something that's happened?
Yeah, my biggest thing is just so I'm mostly focused on the licensing side of our business. So all of the news content and the data that is within Benzinga, all of that outbound flow to the other businesses where they may use that data and white label it within their platforms. The biggest thing that we focus on, and I've been focused on, is just validity and accuracy of that data. So we always want to have a system in place to make sure that the accuracy is there and that we never need to do a correction on some data or a news item that comes out.
And so that is an area. I mean, that sounds to me, first of all, speed is important, right? Your whoever's white labeling it doesn't want to have a delay with that information. So any particular things that you took away from that in terms of how to validate accuracy at speed?
Yeah, validating accuracy at speed. One of the ways that we've done that is it's also through traceability in a different sense, not tracing an agent's actions, but tracing where did the data come from, because a lot of the data is second party data. It's not first party data where we're going out directly and speaking to a CEO, although we do that in some instances. So we want to be able to trace the data back to its original source. And when we can do that, we can trace it, and then we can also calculate the turnaround time. And so that's always our North Star, is what's our turnaround time for reporting these accurate metrics.
Thank you for that. And again, I'm just thinking back to your original when we started talking, when you were talking about the SEC information that comes out right an hour or so before validated information comes out from the earnings call, which may be in conflict. So there's obviously kind of adjustments there that get.
Okay, we've been talking about 25 minutes, and it's about this time we normally try to find a way of wrapping this up for folks and giving them some points to take away. So Tommy, as our guest, you get to go first. What point would you like our audience to take away from?
I guess a big point for me and one that's interesting is self-agency now is critical, and now more than ever, people have the ability to make their own decisions, and if they feel strongly enough about a certain product or topic, they can always go out and build it, and so I think that's pretty cool, and it's happened and unfolded very, very recently. That wasn't always the case. Even 5 years ago, it was expensive and cumbersome to build something, and now you can do it quickly.
I think I'm going to pick, connected to that, Tommy, was the differentiation that you were mentioning around compliance and regulatory frameworks, but more just recognizing that in a hyper competitive situation where anybody can come up with something very, very quickly, it's both beneficial to yourselves, but also there's this need to protect through various different types of moats, of which one of them was regulatory.
I think I would add the one around the ensuring that we think about where the humans belong in the loop. That there's still a need to have somebody check over and validate that we're not about to say something daft. But still understanding that for low risk things, then yeah, sure, because we've got deterministic processes and other pieces, then check into that. But having humans in the right parts of the system to validate it's still necessary. I think that's an interesting takeaway for folks. Okay, with that, I'd like to say, well, thank you very much, Tommy, and thank you, Dave, as always. And we'll wrap it up there. People can send us any questions at feedback@definitelymaybeagile.com. And don't forget to hit subscribe. We like new subscribers. So thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. You've been listening to Definitely Maybe Agile, the podcast where your hosts, Peter Madison and David Sharrock, focus on the art and science of digital, agile, and DevOps at scale.